Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kieran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there.
Because you try and play both things. You try and play the mistakes that you're making because your fingers want to do that. And then you try and play the bit that is correct and try and overlay them in some way so that it then becomes right. But actually the way to do it is erase that bit in entirety from your memory and from your fingers and just kind of learn it correctly, slowly and build it up. But it's a really difficult thing to do once you've already learnt it like wrong.
Greetings, welcome to another Guitar Smarts podcast. Thank you very much for joining us this week. This week, Kieran and I are discussing practicing and guitar practice in general. Again, it's about 6 months since we had our first discussion about this, and we thought we would revisit just to see how we've got on over the last 6 months of trying to instigate some kind of practice regime and how we feel about our guitar skills and our practice now in our lives and what we're going to do to move on from that. Remember to follow us on our social media pages as well. You can find us on facebook.com/guitarsmarts and also on Instagram at the handle @guitar_smarts. And if you feel like spending some money, then you can come and spend some money on our merchandise store at Etsy. So you can find the link for that in the description. But if you don't fancy some merch, but you do want to support the show, then you can buy us a coffee at buyusacoffee.com/guitarsmarts. Remember as well to leave a rating and a review for the podcast in your favourite podcast app. That really helps us to get the show into the ears of more listeners and more guitarists looking for a podcast to listen to. That's super helpful if you could do that. And also, just one last thing is our podcasts are coming to YouTube soon. So if you do like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, that's going to happen soon as well. Anyway, that's enough waffle from me. Let's get to it. Anyway, how are you doing, bud? Are you well?
I'm really good, mate. It's a smart new haircut there.
John, look how grey I'm going.
Oh, dude, it happens to the best of us.
Incredibly grey now. I don't mind it actually, but
nice.
It's only like meeting, like calls like this, so I go, oh, crikey, look at that. Literally just almost entirely grey. Look at the beard.
I know, that's cool. At least it matches.
How'd you know?
Dude, there's more guitars behind you. They're growing.
Well, it's kind of. So obviously I've got the Les Paul and the Strat.
Yeah.
I got that bass.
Yeah.
And I got two more matching hangers to put on the wall. So that little acoustics one I bought my wife for her birthday a couple of years ago.
I didn't realise.
I was kind of, she wanted to learn guitar and she's picked up a few chords and stuff like that, but never got any further than that. But yeah, that's hers. And I thought, well, I've got two hangers, so I've got to put, and I said to Lucy, I said, it doesn't really hang very well on that hanger, so I might have to just get something else now that the hanger's up, because I can't have a hanger on the wall and not a guitar to put on it.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's all kinds of sad, isn't it?
This.
Yeah.
Keeping my eye out for something secondhand.
Accepting the fact that she's lost her guitar now. Yeah. and you'll buy another one as well. Good man. Good stuff. Oh,
yeah, cool. Man. Yeah, it's nothing new. I think I said this to you last week, but I literally just changed out my entire rig and done the pedal board, and we spoke about it last week. And I did. Like, I'm like, I've just done 3 gigs, right? This summer. I've done 3 wedding gigs. And I can honestly say in 3 gigs, 2 hours of playing guitar per gig, I haven't heard myself playing it once.
I know, I got your message and it made me very sad because you put in all this effort and kind of, you got this beautiful rig, and then really you just could not hear anything you were doing?
It'd be, in certain songs there was a little bit, but not to any point where I know if I not to any point where I got the benefit of the rig that I had.
Yes.
I couldn't hear myself well enough to go, oh, this sounds great. It was just kind of like, well, I'm assuming it sounds okay. I'll just keep playing until the end of the gig kind of thing. And I thought, well, what's the point in this? Why not? Why have the kind of, excuse me, just burped. Why have the kind of rig that I have if I'm not going to be able to really kind of, I can't play it loud enough to really hear it anyway. And the kind of gigs that I do, for this wedding band, this last one I just had, I was on a stage in a marquee where I stood on the stage, my head was up into the fabric of the marquee. It was the most uncomfortable thing ever. I had the keyboard player there, and I had the drums there, so I had to play kind of sideways on the whole time because there was no room on this tiny little stage for a 7-piece band. So between the pedal board and my amp was just enough space for my feet.
Right.
And the guy who run the band didn't book a sound engineer because he was kind of like, it's my PA, so I'll just do the sound myself. But he's playing the bass and we didn't get a sound check. So I can't, there's no point in me asking for him to put me in the monitors because the monitors are just for the singers, the way he set things up. The sound coming from those monitors is terrible. And I was just stood there thinking, what is the point? What's the point of trying to sound good when you don't have the opportunity to? The gigs that I do, and I thought it really does make sense. For me, it really does make sense for me to kind of change my approach, I think, and actually go for a Helix into an FRFR kind of cab type thing where I can have patches set up that I know sound good regardless of where I am, that I can monitor myself from. If I had like a Helix, I'd be able to monitor. I could take an output from it just for myself, put it into my ears, whether I had a cab or not. I'd be able to hear myself and could go straight into a desk. And these things, I've been doing so much reading up and listening to how these things are now, with the latest updates on the Helix product range. They just sound immense. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm selling everything except my guitars. Everything.
I love that. What a bold choice.
The pedals, the cab, the power supply, the amp.
Right.
Everything. I'm going to sell everything. With what I make, I'm going to get basically as some kind of modeler, and it depends how much I make, but ideally something like the Helix Floor LT, which is kind of the second one down from the top of the range model, and like a little Headrush FRFR cabinet, which is like basically a powered monitor that I could have facing me, or I could have it behind me. It could be the amp. It could, it doesn't have to be used depending, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change everything over because I've had enough of not being able, of having a great sounding amp and pedals and stuff, and just not being able to, it's a waste for me.
It's not a waste for you. It's a waste based on the venues and restrictions that we find ourselves in. Like you, I mean, I'm going out with, powerful gear that deserves to be played at a decent volume to really appreciate what it can do. But there's very few venues where, for the average jobbing, weekend, or kind of depping guitarist, where you can really fully appreciate all of that at a decent enough volume. There have been some venues and some pubs that have been playing, and some little outdoor festivals and stuff where you can wind it up and you can go, oh yeah, this sounds great. But you get to some of these pubs, and as you say, some of them are tiny and the acoustics are terrible in there, and you're just like, right, how there's not enough space to really drive this. So you never quite get the sound that you're looking for. And so I think having that kind of solution that you've talked about, being able to go direct into the desk, have the monitoring that you need, and just simplify it, but with some really great modelled tones that, by all accounts these days don't even sound like they're modelled. They just sound like great tones.
Yeah.
So many people are doing it, right? So many.
Yeah.
So, all right, here we go. A new journey for you, Matt.
That's it. One of my old ACM guitar tutors, Andy Jones, is he's on tour at the moment in Europe with an orchestra they're doing an orchestrated tour of basically Led Zeppelin stuff. So
cool.
It's like Led Zeppelin by orchestra with various singers, various guitarists, and his rig
that sounds just amazing.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And it's he's all over Europe with it, and he's going into a Helix, just Helix on the floor straight into PA. A couple of guitars using a Variax and a couple of other normal guitars. That's it. That's all he's got. That's all he's flying with. Just 3 guitars in a flight case and a Helix, and that's it.
Amazing. He wasn't tempted to go and buy like a £10,000 Gibson Jimmy Page replica?
No.
Wow,
no.
Strange. Weird.
Yeah, it's strange, that, isn't it? It is strange. Why wouldn't you do that? Yeah.
Wow. Oh, mate, I'm really looking forward to hearing about this journey. I mean, you're well versed with like trading gear, selling it, and getting new stuff, and getting to grips with the kit. But I can't wait to hear your opinions on it, and if this is going to be now the way forward. Mostly,
I just know it's going to be awesome.
Yeah,
I just know. I'm going to get one of these things and I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to be able to use it USB into the laptop. I'm going to be able to use it standalone with headphones at a gig. However I want to use it, it will be any rig that I want it to be. And so I know it's just going to be brilliant. I just have to let go of the fact that it's not a kind of a glowing valve amp behind me that can sound fantastic, that could really sound like the kind of tones that I have in my head, but I'm never going to have the opportunity to create those tones in an authentic way. If I want, that's part of the problem, right? If I want to sound in, at a gig like somebody who's playing through some kind of cranked plexi, I'm never going to be able to do that in an authentic way. If I want to sound like somebody who's playing through, a really nice, clean Fender Super or something like that, again, for me, that's just impractical. It's never going to really work in any of the gigs that I do. So I need to find a way, and this is the way, to have the sounds that I want in a practical way, and have all the advantages of the flexibility that gives.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I've got to say, I've kind of come to the conclusion this last week that I don't really see myself as a gigging guitarist anymore. As much as I enjoy gigging and I've missed it, I've done some gigs this summer and I keep thinking, well, do you know what? It's nice to have a handful of paid gigs a year for me to get out there and earn a bit of extra cash. I like going to jam nights. Already the kind of the process of being in a new band is something that has frustrated me, because I reached out to a mate recently, and he wanted to start a new band as well, and we got together for a jam with some other guys, and they all had very clear kind of and similar tastes in the music they wanted to do. And I was looking at all the suggestions thinking, like, 90% of what's in this I don't want to play. It's not a criticism of them, it's just if I'm going to be in a band for my own fun, I don't want to be doing music that I don't like. And I thought, this is just too much hard work. I'd rather join a band that's already doing stuff that I like, or not be in a band at all. So
yeah, there's a lot to be said for that.
I'm not going to chase that kind of plan anymore. I'm going to just see what happens in the future. If a band comes along that needs a guitarist and it's the kind of band I'd like to be in, then so be it. But until then, I'm not going to start anything or try and come up with a project or start my own band or anything like that. I'm quite happy doing the podcast, doing the occasional dep gig, going to jam nights and recording and writing and just playing at home and practicing, getting better. I'm enjoying being a home guitarist, actually.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, the pandemic's done that.
Yeah,
for certain.
Yeah, the amount of ways in which you've pushed your playing and kind of really sought to kind of keep, challenging yourself. That's been really impressive to see over the last couple of years with the pandemic and things. And I mean, if that's what you're liking and enjoying, I know the gigs that you've been doing recently haven't been doing much for you in terms of music and getting to play the gear in the way that you want it to. So yeah, there comes a point where you go, well, that's not the right way forward. But these things in life are transient, but you go through phases. We all do, right? Of having the energy and the commitment to look and join a new band and get out there and gig and build those relationships. And it is hard work. It really is. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to do it when you've got everything else in life. Other commitments, work commitments, family commitments, friend commitments, other hobbies, other interests to kind of slot it all in. So yeah, I do get what you're saying. But I'm still going to keep pushing you to try and get out there and keep playing live, because the world needs to hear you playing So, no, for sure, man, for sure.
Under the right circumstances, definitely. I just, I don't have the energy to force something to happen anymore.
Yes, I know the feeling.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
I do, man, and I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling, right? Because what we're ideally, a lot of us who are, I guess, that fall into that camp of being non-professional musicians, but playing to a decent standard where, we want to be able to be out and gigging, but we have other jobs and things. It's a really difficult thing to find a band that fits that bill, right? Which is, playing the type of music you want to play, got some gigs that, allow you to get out there and gig, but without having to hunt and chase down gigs and book up gigs. Cause that's a bloody full-time job in itself, right? Just trying to fill the diary with gigs. And none of us have got time to do that. So you need to have somebody in the band like we had in Roadrunner. Or like it exists within my current band where the bass player is just, amazing at going out there and chasing up all the gigs. But that's a lot of work and energy. So there's got to be someone in the band willing to do that and take all the hard work out of it for the other members.
Yeah.
And then it's got to be the right frequency of gigging as well, because, you've got other things going on in your life, right? So, but it's always the dilemma, because if you want to play in a band that's of the standard that you are as a player, generally speaking, they're going to be out there gigging quite a lot. And it's kind of like, I can't really commit to that. So then you go, well, as we've all done, you go, well, okay, then what bands are there out there that are just doing maybe 1-2 gigs a month that kind of I can slot in around my life? And you look at them and you go, well, there's a reason they're only gigging once or twice a month at best. And that's because, they're not at the standard where they can be out there gigging more than that necessarily.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
So it's a tough thing to try and get. So when you get it, and you find it, you're kind of like, okay, this is good, but it does take energy.
It takes time and energy, doesn't it? And that's not...
Yeah, it does.
It's for the, again, like I said, for the right band, I'll put the time and energy in. But if I was younger and had more time, I'd be happy to start something from scratch and, have a rehearsal or two a week and really try and make something. I haven't got the time, energy, or desire to do that. Right, in my life right now, I've got plenty of things going on which I enjoy. Away from music, and there's no need for it really. But I do want to play. I want to go to jam nights and take on the occasional dep gig, because dep gigs are just you turn up and play and take. It's just a bit of it gets you out and about, and it's not the same as being in a band that you love, that you have some kind of ownership over. I say ownership, I mean you it's a band you're in that you contribute towards the ongoing of it. But yeah, so that's where I am. What about you? How's your week been? You been good?
Yeah. Week's been good. Well, things that have happened this week. So kids are back at school now after the summer holidays, so that's all good. I went back into the office and have started to kind of meet up with work colleagues now, which after... So where are we now? We are September 21. So we went into lockdown here in the UK in March of 2020, and we basically closed our offices and have been working from home since then. So that's a good year and a half.
So is this the first time in a year and a half that you've been back to the office?
Yeah, we opened.
But it felt like a first day at work again, didn't it?
It was like a first day at school. It was like a high school reunion. It was all kinds of weird emotions. I mean, it was the most unproductive day of my life in the last 18 months. We got in there and literally for the first hour and a half, I was just chatting and speaking to people and catching up. Opened up my laptop to maybe do some work, and then I think it was probably about 4:00 before I actually sat down and actually tried to do something. And then I thought, you know what, traffic's going to start getting a bit rubbish. I better get on the road and make my hour commute home. I literally did nothing all day. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But it was more about seeing people, keeping in touch with people. And so that started again. But we're doing flexible working and stuff now. So I think I'll just do like a couple of days in the office a week and then the rest at home, because you know what, the world continued, or at least our business continued in spite of the challenges of the lockdown. the world didn't continue in many ways. It was put on pause, but some businesses did okay. Thankfully, ours was one of them. So that's new this week. Got a gig tomorrow, just one this weekend, which is good and not too far away, kind of half an hour from home. So looking forward to that tomorrow. And then a big family get together on Sunday coming up. So it's a nice weekend in store, but a boat ton of work to do this afternoon after we finished our podcast fun. So that's me at the moment, but all good, man. All good.
Good. Fantastic.
Yeah, can't complain.
I'm glad to hear it, buddy. Well, let's get on with our topic for this week, right? Which is and I realised that we're revisiting a topic here that we did. It was episode 10, Guitar Smarts, which was can you believe it, 6 months ago? So
wow,
yeah. So we're getting on a bit. We started in January, didn't we? And we're
9 months
episodes in. We're 9 months in, and we've managed, except for obviously taking a summer break in August to keep an episode coming out every week, which is great. But episode 10, we talked all about guitar practice and music theory and progressing our skills, and I think I helped to open your eyes to a view of music theory and why it is I think important. I think guitarists were guilty of thinking that music theory is not important because it's easier to learn the guitar without needing a background of music theory than it is for some other instruments where you need a grasp of both as you're learning them to understand things a little bit more intelligently. Guitar you can kind of get away without it. So since then we've had aspirations to improve areas of our playing and our understanding, and I thought 6 months on from that podcast, let's revisit that, see how we've progressed, what we're doing, how maybe our aspirations have changed, how we've improved, things that we want to do to get better, and maybe have a discussion about that and our experiences over the last 6 months. So let's see where we find ourselves so far.
Did we make any resolutions? Did we make any promises or commitments to ourselves? Because that's what we should do. I can't remember if we went. I think what we started to do is set ourselves like weekly challenges and ask each other what we were going to work on this week and that week. And I think by and large we did some of that. But now 6 months on, I'm thinking maybe we should have made like a really bold commitment back then 6 months ago. Maybe we should do that today, so that in 6 months' time, when we get to episode 65 or whatever, we go, right, did we actually achieve that? Because there's nothing like making something really big and bold and then saying it out loud and then recording it and putting it on a podcast.
I think we should make some kind of commitment to not just to achieve a particular goal, but to kind of set not just to say learn something in particular, but to maintain a level of commitment to practicing and learning as we go along.
Definitely.
Because and I've got to say, that's the thing for me that's been the most sporadic is I have practiced more since we've had that conversation. I have set myself goals, and I still have things defined in my mind that I want to improve on. And I have done things to improve those things, but what I haven't done is made a regular commitment to doing that. And I think that's always going to be in any area of your life. The key to success is always going to be consistency.
Yeah.
And do you find you're the same? I mean, when you sit down to play guitar, are you a noodler, or do you sit down sometimes to kind of work on things? Are you consistent with your approach? Do you put time to practice aside, or what? What's guitar time like for you over the last 6 months?
Oh, mate, what a great question. So, what I would say is it does vary, and it depends on how much time I've got to do something. But the short answer and the honest answer to your question is I'm a noodler, right? for sure, and we should get that on a t-shirt. We definitely need to. That's another one for the merch tent, isn't it? Yeah. We've created quite a few random catchphrases between us accidentally over the last 9 months.
I'm a noodle is a good one.
I'm a noodler.
Steve Lukather to do should be another one, maybe.
Yeah, what would Steve Lukather do?
There's a question actually there for our Guitar Smarts listeners. What do you think should be on a Guitar Smarts t-shirt as a slogan? Come up with your merchandise ideas, please, and let us know on social media pages. That'd be great.
It's good, but it's not Toto. I'm on a roll now. I've completely gone off at a tangent. Right. So let's. So I like guitar practice for me is one of those weird things now where I still, even after all of our talk, I still haven't built myself like a regular routine. And I agree with you exactly what you've just said. Like if you want to accomplish something and you want to achieve something, like setting a plan. And I don't know, it sounds a bit dry and it sounds a bit calculated and not as, creatively inspiring as you might think it should. But, that's how you get really good at anything, right?
Yeah.
So I think trying to strive for that is a good thing. And what I would say is the conversations that we had and started 6 months ago together on this podcast about practicing because we couldn't get out there and play, or go to a jam night or what have you, meant we were forced to be in our houses with our guitars as our, stream of releasing, our musical frustrations. And therefore there's only so much noodling you could do before it was kind of like, well, now I'm just wasting time. Right.
Yeah.
That was the feeling that I got, like, because I remember, and I spoke about it earlier, right? When we said, right, we're locking down the offices, and it was March at that point, 2020. And at the time we did that, everyone in the country really in similar situations was having conversations like, this could go on for maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe even 6 weeks.
Yeah.
We could be just working from home for the next 6 weeks. That's crazy. And then quite quickly the conversation started to be, we might not go back to the offices until June or July. That's insane. And then, we kept setting those milestones, and then before you knew it, like months were starting to fly by. So I remember with regards to guitar, trying to balance work and family life and homeschooling and all of that, and guitar being there for me as it has throughout my life as a point to, just take my mind off stuff, do other things, it's our hobbies and passion, right? So you pick it up and you play. And then I remember thinking to myself, I'm starting to waste the opportunity here. And I don't think I've ever had that, or at least I hadn't had that feeling or that train of thought since I was a teenager or at university, where I had an inordinate amount of time on my hands outside of kind of, college work or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was, it didn't have a full-time job, didn't have family commitments, didn't have all those other kind of things that you get burdened with later in life. So that was probably the only other point in my life where I really had a great practice regime and kept pushing myself, because to do anything otherwise was just like a waste of time. And I was just, noodling for the sake of noodling. So this lockdown put me back in that position where just one day I just sat there and I went, well, there's always been some songs that you've wanted to do, or stop faking your way through them, or just sit down and learn them properly. Just make a list and just tick them off, because what else are you going to do with your practicing? So that's how it started. And then we started this podcast and started chatting about practicing, and as you said earlier on in this conversation today, you opened my mind to, I would say you didn't necessarily open my mind to the importance of theory, because I knew it was always important, but you definitely coached me and gave me the confidence to start to tackle it at this stage again of my life and get over my kind of fears and anxieties. And you demystified a lot of things for me and explained things in a really nice way when I was getting stuck with some bits and pieces that gave me that confidence to go, actually, you know what, I can go back and I can start learning all of this. And I haven't learned all the theory that I'm capable of learning.
Yeah.
I can still learn more and get better. So you definitely did that for me. So then it started to progress from there. And I enjoyed quite at least a couple or 3 months of setting myself goals on a weekly basis with that list of songs that I wanted to tackle. Because we and again, this was another thing that you instilled, which was it's always still got to be fun. So if you're going to read a chapter of this book around the major scale and how to apply it across the neck in different positions, great, do that. But then go and do something really fun that also is pushing your playing. So that kind of worked for a couple of 3 months, and I managed to achieve some things that, you know, I'm really pleased with. I wouldn't say I got anywhere near to what I hoped I would, or got myself into a routine that is now habitual and that is consistent, and I do week in, week out. And I can talk about the reasons for that, you know, as we go throughout this conversation. But that's kind of where I'm at, and that's so now. I am still a noodler, but I still think from the conversations we've had, there's elements where I still try, even on a, you know, little noodling session, to just recall and remember and push some of the things that I did learn during my lockdown practice sessions.
Interesting. So I was going to ask you about that list of songs as well, because I think we both came to that conclusion, like you say, at the end of the last conversation we had, the podcast we did about practicing, where I think you have to have an element of learning things that make you feel good, as well as learning things that on paper, at least, you think should benefit you. And I did the same thing where I wanted to learn particular guitar tracks and songs. And I've got some playlists, actually. I've got a playlist on Spotify, which is, you know, guitar solos I want to learn. And if I'm listening to music and I'd love to be able to play that, I put it in that playlist. I also have a playlist of, you know, songs I want to learn the chords to, you know, it's just something I really like the sound of the changes and, you know, things. And I think that's interesting. It would be a really interesting exercise to sit down and try and work out what all those different inversions are and things like that. So I have those playlists, and from time to time I'll go through something and try and pull out, you know, 4 or 6 bars of music and try and learn that and transcribe it down in a, you know, onto paper so that I've got a reference for it. And I've got to say that process there has been so important. And I don't just mean the learning of what it is I'm trying to play, but the writing down. So actually not like kind of informal kind of notation or anything. Just give you a kind of an example. You know, and listeners won't be able to see this because I'm showing you this, but something like this where I'm just putting like the chords down in kind of bars. So where I'm trying to learn like the turnarounds or something, or if I'm doing some other things where I've been trying to play some kind of, you know, trying to learn some licks, and I'm just, it's not properly notated in terms of rhythm or bars or time signatures or key signatures, but I'm just trying to write the notes down with an idea of what the rhythms are for certain things. So just trying to do that. That's been really key, because playing it's one thing, but the process of writing it down for me has been key to kind of sinking it into my brain.
That's what I was going to ask you, right? Because the very fact you have that nice little notebook on your desk, and, you know, these aren't random scrawlings in that notebook. It's not fully notated out on the stave, some of it in a really formal
It's a tab.
way.
It's a little tab notebook.
But it is beautifully written, and you've taken the time to write it out really nicely and neatly on each page and put notes and things. I've never done that. So tell us about why that works for you in terms of like a practice method, rather than just playing it to yourself and listening to it like 50 times until your finger memory is just like, yeah, I've got it now.
I'd say there's a number of reasons. So one of them is, for me, just my own mental process of being able to transfer that into my information. So rather than kind of learning, let's say it was a guitar solo from a song, and it's just maybe 4 bars of a guitar solo, I could sit and listen to that solo and play it and learn it and have it under my fingers. But for some reason, writing it down in the notation and putting some detail in there about articulation, like hammer-ons and pull-offs, and then looking at it in those little chunks of bars, helps you to break down the phrases that make up that solo. So now, instead of thinking about learning it from beginning to end, now I'm looking at it with my eyes rather than listening to it and trying to understand blocks of phrases. And that writing it out process helps me to break break it down and learn it differently. And I feel I benefit from that in a number of ways because I can process it easier when I'm learning, but I can also kind of assimilate it into my own playing better because I'm looking at these little chunks of playing, each bar and thinking, well, that by itself, can now go into my pocket of improvisation licks. It helps you to build your repertoire of your own things a little bit more.
Yeah.
But also, I think it's good discipline to write things down and have a visual look at how you're playing something, or how something is to be played. Another thing that's good to do is to sometimes try and transcribe something down as you're listening to it, and then see if you're correct when you try and then play the tab, because that's good ear training as well. So I just think it's a good practice to do is to try and transcribe things down. Even things you already know how to play, maybe transcribe it down and look at it. And another thing that's important about that is one of the things I try to do is I try and write the chords over the bar that I'm playing the solo to. So if I'm transcribing, Kid Charlemagne or something by Steely Dan, it's important in that song to write the chords above the bar that you're writing the solo to, because then you can really see how those notes, how they're chosen against the chords. Because if it's a guitarist that's playing against changes, and who is, trying to accentuate the chords that you're playing over rather than just play licks from a scale. When you transcribe that, you should be trying to transcribe it with that understanding alongside it, rather than just rote learning the solo to something. So that's been really key over the last 6 months for me in practicing. If I'm learning something of somebody else's, writing it down and transcribing it is, I'd say, it even speeds up the process of learning, because again, breaking it down into bars, just say to yourself, I'm going to learn the first 2 bars. I'm going to make space in my book here for 2 bars worth of transcription, and I'm going to learn it and write it down and then play it over and over and over. Those 2 bars, breaking it down. So that's definitely key for me. That's something you've never done.
I've definitely used Tab to help me kind of learn new songs. And as you were talking, I was kind of thinking, you're right. I've noticed when I'm trying to learn a piece, there is a difference, obviously, in the way I assimilate the information or what I'm doing, versus if I'm just learning it by ear from listening to it, versus learning it by listening and looking at the tab as to what's going on and then trying to play it. There is something different in that. And I've kind of experienced that, but I've never sat down and written out the tab myself to learn a piece. In fact, I'm trying to think if I've ever sat down and written out tab ever. No. If I'm trying to learn a song, I will quite often write down the chords and the chords on the chord sequence. I'll quite often do that because oftentimes I just like to learn it by listening to it. So I'll sit down and I'll write out the chords over. What I often do is I get the lyrics and I just print off the lyrics and I go, right, come on, you don't need to go and look up the chords for this. Do it yourself, right? Unless you get really super stuck and it's some weird inversion or something. So I often do that because I like to challenge myself, but I think it just helps me commit it to memory more if I'm listening, trying to identify the chord, then physically writing it down and seeing that chord sequence. There's something about my brain that it can almost take a photograph of that page with the lyrics and see the chords. And that I find easy enough to do, but never with individual notes for like a solo or something. That is always, that is done in much in a similar way to what you're describing, but in my head, where I'll have memorized the chord sequence and then know which, minor or major pentatonic in my case to apply at the right moment for those changes, right? So, but that's as sophisticated as it gets. Seeing your notebook there and how you're applying that to your learning, that's a whole different thing. But really interesting to see how that works for you.
Well, I say another thing it does for me is it slows me down in a good way. slows me down. If I'm trying to learn, a particular part or piece, if I'm trying to write it down, it's not just solidifying the information because I'm writing it in, and I'm having to process it in a way so that I can write it, but it's slowing me down. I'm not going through everything too quickly. I'm not trying to learn, I've got an 8-bar solo to learn for this song, for a wedding, whatever. I'm not going to sit down and go, well, I need to learn that whole solo from beginning to end. I'm thinking, I'm notating this as I go along. So there's no way I can notate more than half a bar to a bar at a time. So I'm having to slow my learning process down to transcribe something, which is good because that means I'm taking the information in at a more palatable pace. Right?
That makes sense.
So there's byproducts, I think, to doing transcribing. Even if, sometimes I'll try to transcribe something and go, well, that part there is probably not the right thing that's being played. It's good enough for me, but it still helps in the process. So that's really been key for me. So,
Good
but
tip.
I'm kind of the same as you. I'm a noodler. I'm definitely a noodler rather than somebody who sits down and practices properly. I have to be giving myself a real kind of target, or I have to have something that I have to learn for a gig to really focus in on something. But there have been times over the past 6 months where I've tried to give myself, real practice targets, working with a metronome to do things in time. That's something I realise I've lost quite a lot since not being in a band full time, is a good kind of, not appreciation, but I feel like I've lost my ability to sense time well in music. If I'm trying to play rhythm guitar at home along with a metronome, if I'm trying to kind of do, because I've been trying to work on my picking speed. That's something I've mentioned a couple of times, right? So if I'm doing like 16th notes over a, over a steady beat, if I set a metronome and try and do that, doing kind of like just a little run, a little repeating 4-note pattern, I find myself coming in and out of time. I'll hear myself, I'm a little bit behind the metronome, and I'll speed up, and then I'm a little bit ahead, and I've noticed I've found it hard to lock into time. And I think part of that is because, if you've never really worked with a metronome, but most of the time you've been playing with a drummer or another human being, then you have a tendency to come in out of time, to move tempos. I mean, when we
drummers
were in
are not metronomes.
When we were in Roadrunner, our drummer then would just be like, you'd be 20 BPM faster by the end of any song. It was hilarious. I mean. But yeah, so that's something I've been realizing over the last 6 months as well, as when I am working on technique or practicing, doing it to a metronome is equally frustrating and important. But again, good for slowing you down. Again, if you need to learn something that's a little bit too out of your reach speed wise or frustrating, there's a key thing that I've always done, which is I tend to, if I don't slow things down and learn things carefully, I end up learning the mistakes that I make. Have you ever done that?
When I said earlier, faking my way through pieces, right? That's exactly the correct explanation of what that is. And that was a light bulb moment for me in the practicing that I've done over the last 6 months, after decades of being a guitarist and, playing to a decent enough standard. But my impatience to learn something and my desire to go, well, I know I can play at that speed that guitarist is playing. It's not like a playing speed that is beyond my capability. It's not like something that Vi's doing where I just go, wow, that's just going to take forever to build up to that speed. Where I go, well, then I should just learn it at that speed. And the consequence of that is that the note choice sometimes and my own impatience means there's the odd note here or there that isn't quite right. It's not a bum note, but it's just not quite right. And so you kind of fake it through and 80% of it's there. And for most people, it's good enough. But when you listen back to the recording, it's some of those 1 or 2 notes. There you go. They're really key because they do add something to that piece. And I am skipping over those in some way because of whatever reason. So learning some of the pieces that I've been doing and defaking some of the pieces that I already know has required me to slow down those pieces and learn them at a lesser speed so that the notes I'm playing are right, and then working it up to full speed, which as you say, requires a discipline, but it's definitely more rewarding and not as boring as I thought it was going to be, because my impatience comes from getting bored and thinking that this is just, I'm wasting my time with it, but it's not actually. When you do that, just play it through slower a few times. And yeah, all of a sudden, and when you try to build up to speed, it's there and you go, I've got it. And it's so much more rewarding.
Absolutely. Completely agree. It's learning something tends to always be a process of learning it incorrectly and then spending time correcting it rather than just learning it correctly because of that exact thing. Because you try and almost, I mean, maybe it's not the same for you, but for me, it's almost like I'm trying to bite off more than I can chew.
Yeah.
You're trying to kind of, make a way of doing something to get through the learning process. And then you realize afterwards, well, if I just do this properly, that'll sound better. Yeah. But the problem I have now is untangling something first before I kind of insert that correct thing into what I'm trying to do. Yeah. And you just kind of make it worse for yourself. You do because you try and play both things. You try and play the mistakes that you're making because your fingers want to do that, and then you try and play the bit that is correct and try and overlay them in some way so that it then becomes right. But actually, the way to do it is erase that bit in entirety from your memory and from your fingers, and just kind of learn it correctly, slowly, and build it up. But it's a really difficult thing to do once you've already learnt it completely,
like wrong the first time.
Why does your brain do that? It's interesting, kind of, to think about it in a way that it's like you're fighting against the way the human brain works half the time when you're learning things. Yeah. Having an awareness of it before the fact, though, understanding how you learn things and understanding where your challenges are in learning helps you to make better choices when you're learning, though. I think that might be the most profound thing I've come to understand over the last 6 months for the first time in a long time, of trying to develop a way of practicing and learning things that I haven't done before. Is you have to really understand your own abilities as a learner. How do you learn things the best? Are you a good listener? Do you need things visually? Do you need to plan things ahead? How do you learn the best? And planning how you're then going to do some practice, supporting that in the way you practice, is definitely key to success. The things that I've done well over the last 6 months have been things that I've spent time to do well in a way that I know I learn things. My learning style, is kind of the best supported. And those things that I haven't learned well have been, rushed last minute before gigs and not taking the time to really plan it properly.
But that's what happens, isn't it? And that it's not maybe sometimes a conscious decision always to be impatient, or it's not even laziness. It's out of necessity. I think that I've developed a bad approach to learning over the years, because invariably it's been to join a band and come up to speed with a set list really quickly, or do a depth gig for a band where you kind of know the songs, but not brilliantly. So you go back and you just refresh yourself on them, but you're learning like blocks of songs, in a short space of time. So the way my brain works, and to stop myself having a complete kind of, anxiety panic attack, because invariably I always leave it a little bit too late before the gig itself to kind of to learn them, is, you kind of listen through each one and you go, okay, which ones have I got in the bag? And I know, great. Yeah. Those ones are fine. They're done. And then which ones do I need to learn? And you go through it, and it's almost a case of, right, how can I learn it as quickly as possible to be able to get through that song on a gig? It's like level 1 of learning it. Yeah. Right. Okay, cool. I know the chord sequence now, and I can play through it. Great. Then how do I learn all the intricacies of it? And then do I need to, is it an iconic enough solo in it where I need to learn the solo note for note, or can I improvise the solo to a point where it's passable? And all of those things are kind of like spectrums of how much time have I got to learn this song before the day it needs to be played. And then when you scale that up to having to learn 15 songs for a set, and then 35 songs because you've got to learn 2 sets and an encore amount, there isn't enough time. So it creates a bad way of, well, it's not really practicing, is it? It's like learning songs to get out there and gig, but it's not really truly practicing something.
No, yeah, you're right. You're trying to
talking about.
Yeah, you're trying to kind of you're trying to make the work you have to do fit the time you have to do it, and then that has an effect on the quality of work that you do, doesn't it? You know,
it does.
The detail, and the devil's in the detail in a lot of these things. And I tend to find if I have to learn a first dance for someone, I feel under a lot of pressure to really get it right, especially if it's a song with a very particular guitar part. And I always, regardless of what other songs I might have to learn, if there's a first dance, I always learn it in a way that I know means that things go in, which is to listen to the song, learn the individual parts, and then I'll write them down in like an arrangement so I can listen to the song and go, right, I know it's going into a pre-chorus now after 8 bars or whatever, and I can follow it through, and then I go, okay, yeah, right, so the arrangement I've written out is exactly what's being played. So I'm going to, now I've learnt my parts, I'm going to play along with the song following that arrangement, and I get to the end of the song and go, I'm right. It's almost like you're verifying yourself each step along the way. I think, okay, I've played each section correctly, and I've played them all in the right order because I've written it out, so I'm going to do that a few times, and then you kind of start building confidence, and then I put the arrangement to the side where I can't see it, and I do play over the song 2 or 3 times, and then I kind of get to a point where I go, okay, I know this now, I'm playing my parts correctly, I know what sections are coming next, the pressure's gone now, because I don't feel like I'm going to turn up to this gig and about to ruin somebody's first dance, because I've followed a process of learning a song, but that might take an hour, and like you say, if you don't have much time to learn 30 songs or 40 songs for a new band, then you're not going to do that same process, are you? You're going to kind of say to yourself, well, what's an acceptable, maybe I learn verse, chorus, and middle section. I don't worry about the arrangement because I'm going to follow the singer.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to learn the exact arrangement so I can play along without making a mistake. I'm just going to learn those parts, the key. I know there's a solo there, so I'll improvise a solo for that section and try and do something similar to the original. Right, next song. So you kind of, it's like there's an acceptable amount of failure in the system that you're willing to let remain.
And a willingness for the band to tolerate that for a certain number of gigs,
that's
right?
It, yeah.
And so I guess that's been my practice regime of late, is in my head getting it where first few gigs is exactly as you described, and then it's a case of then revisiting each song in the set list going, okay, right, now that is an iconic solo, let's learn it note for note.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Or that is a really important additional, piece that the rhythm guitar is doing, which, just happens on that particular verse as a little piece of whatever. Let's make sure I learn that because I've just been skipping over that, and the audience won't notice, but it's kind of nice to chuck it in there. So gig by gig, I'm kind of just trying to go back and see how I can finesse and refine some of the songs so that they, but it's an interesting one as well. And I was kind of mulling over this, and it's an interesting conversation I need to have with some of the guys in the band, which is like for some of the songs, they have iconic guitar solos, and that to me is like they've got to be learned note for note.
Exactly.
And I've done that for those, but it's also quite subjective, I guess, to individuals, right? Because that's my view on which solos are iconic to me. But for some others in the band, like they may have a different view on some of those songs and which ones are iconic. So do I then get to a stage where I'm learning every single solo for 40 odd songs, note for note, as per the record? Arguably, if you're in a covers band, you probably should do that. But again, I find that quite dull, and I find that quite limiting.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I don't want to be playing something exactly the same every single gig. Especially with the frequency of gigs that we're doing, I kind of want to be able to put my own creative stamp on a solo and do some improvised solos, provided it, as I said, it's a song that hasn't got such an iconic solo that to do anything other than that would be sacrilege. So anyway, I've gone off on another tangent.
Well, I was going to ask actually, what do you think? Because I immediately, when you said that about learning iconic solos, that there immediately a few pop into my brain of that I would always learn to play correctly for gigs, like "Sweet Child of Mine." Obviously, for me, that has to be played. That's an iconic part of the song. I wouldn't improvise a separate solo for any of the guitar parts that are in that, whether it's the main big crescendo at the end, things like that. One of the songs that's in the set with the wedding band is Crazy Little Thing Called Love by Queen. So I always play the Brian May solo for that. But to be fair, anything that's a Queen song with a Brian May solo, it should be the Brian May solo, because he crafts his solos. They're always...
He does.
It's like the complementary to the singing.
Song.
Yeah. And he said in an interview recently online with Rick Beato, when they were talking about Bohemian Rhapsody, he said he's always viewed the guitar solo as, the singer's handing you the baton, and you've got to carry the melody for the song in one way or another, or you add to it and then you hand it back over. That's the way he's always viewed it, rather than some kind of widdly guitar section that you just do what you want and shred with. He sees it as complementary to the melody, and you can hear that in anything.
You can hear that.
Any Queen song I've ever done, it's always been, I've always learned the solo too, because you have to. Brian May stuff.
And because you could probably hum or whistle or sing that solo before you've even learnt it, because they are so iconic. I mean, the way he's described it, one, it's really annoying because that's exactly what he's done with his solos, which means it's deliberate, and he's massively achieving what he set out to do as a philosophy, and on every single song. So that's just annoying because, no one likes to show off, but, he deserves it. I mean,
no one likes to show off.
No, he's awesome. He's absolutely awesome. And again, definitely sits squarely in that camp of, if you're going to learn a guitar solo by Queen, or if you're going to play a Queen song, the guitar solo's got to be verbatim. It just has to be.
It has to be. He's a legend. What a legend he is. Great guitarist. He's such an unorthodox style, compared to other people in terms of his, melodic development and how he creates those solos. You just think of Bohemian Rhapsody, and you think there's no way anyone could have improvised something as good as that. I mean, that is just a beautiful melody that he's playing. Only Brian May really, I think, could have come up with something like that. Learning his stuff it's not too challenging, but it's great to kind of, just sit there and learn those different licks and things that he does, and okay, that's a neat way of doing things.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of circling back to the same conclusion that we had 6 months ago here, which is learn the stuff you love.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think the extra thing I've learned is learn the things you love, but in a way that supports your learning style. That helps to get the most out of the things that you're trying to achieve as a guitarist. You're not just trying to learn the song; you're trying to take in information and look at the perspective of the artist that you're listening to and think about, well, what information do they have that I don't, that means they made this choice, why they're making those choices over these chords. And I think if you can learn things that way, I think that's a step up from maybe the way we do things now or have done things historically.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice summary, mate. I think it really is. But I will say the last 6 months and the conversations that we've had on this subject have definitely been some of the most important around the subject, and because they've changed my approach to it after so many years of just doing things the same way. So the other thing I would say around this is, well, we spoke about it, didn't we? Which is, if you can, get a teacher. Because even if you think you've learned all you want to learn, or all you want to learn or need to learn to kind of teach yourself forevermore, just having somebody that you can converse around this with and who can put little pointers and tips and things to send you off in a new direction is really useful. If you can't get a teacher, just chat to other musicians and other guitarists around this. And I did a lot of that during lockdown as well.
Yeah.
And that really helped. One, it helped me overcome some of the nervousness and anxiety, but it also helped to demystify things. And it also helped me realize that everyone is on their own little journey with trying to get better.
Yeah.
And so it's a journey that will never reach its end destination necessarily. Just kind of enjoy it. And some days you'll make more progress, and others you'll just have a noodle.
Yeah, man, that is so true. That's an important thing to remember. Really good point there, mate. Some days you don't achieve what you want to, but you need to tell yourself other days that you will, and look forward to a day like that. So let's wrap up then on some points. So goals. What are you going to work on? We have this conversation again in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
What do you imagine you would like to be telling me about what you've achieved since this podcast?
It's a really good question. I'd like to be able to
sweet pick.
I had a go at that once. I learned one A minor arpeggio and then played it like for an entire 24 hours and convinced myself that I'd completed sweet picking, so moved on to something else. I can still, that's the only thing I can sweet pick is that one little arpeggio I learned when I was like 18. Yeah. And I kind of said to myself, well, if I wanted to, I understand enough about the basic principles of sweet picking now. I don't. I learned one arpeggio. One arpeggio does not make it completed and learned, but I don't know. It's just never something that I've been massively into when I hear others do it. So it's not that. It's not sweet picking. I've never had an aspiration to be incredible at sweet picking. It is cool. It is cool. It's just not massively for me. I would like to be able to find a way to balance and carve out time as ever has it been, right, where I can't seem to find a way to do both. So during lockdown, when I wasn't out and gigging, I had my list of songs to work through. I had little pointers from you each week. Right, now you've learnt your major scale. Now go and do this, or now go and do that. And I go, yeah, all right, I'll go and do that, and off I'd go and do it. And then as soon as it got into the rhythm of joining a new band, learning through a set list, getting out there and gigging every weekend, it then becomes a case of, well, that is now my gigging time. And the hour or so I have before I'm packing up my gear to go out on a gig is where I'll sit down there and go, okay, what didn't work well on the last gig that I want to fix, that I want to tweak? Let's kind of sort that out before tonight's gig. So tonight's gig, I can feel more confident when we get to that change or that solo or whatever. So that now becomes my little bit of weekly practice or tweaking to my playing, which again, it's just finessing stuff that I'm already out there and playing. And then you get into the vein of kind of learning new songs for the band and trying to, change up the set list and stuff. So although I am playing infinitely more and regularly and using all my gear and enjoying, playing different gear and settings and pedals and all of that, which is brilliant, I'm actually finding that the last particularly couple of months of being out there and properly gigging, now lockdown's over, have meant that my actual discipline of practice and sitting down and pushing myself to learn more theory or learn more across the fretboard has decreased, and I can't seem to find a way to do both. Because my energy and bandwidth for, spending that time on a guitar is all taken up now by playing in the band. So, but that's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
The challenge is now to find a way to do that, because it's going to get to the point where all I'm playing is those same 40 songs. Okay, we'll add in a new song here and there as the months go by, but and I don't want to get into that habit of that's all I'm playing on guitar is those same 40 songs. Week in, week out, because then I'll lose touch with all of the stuff that I've learned during lockdown and the new songs that I've tried to build into my playing, because they're not part of this band's set list. And B, it will just mean that I'm no longer thinking consciously about what I'm playing, because it will then just become so habitual.
Muscle memory.
And I'm still at the stage with these songs where I'm still trying to apply some of what I'm playing back to some of the theory that I've learned, so I'm understanding it more. But that will stop. I'll stop caring about doing that because it's just out there to play. So very long answer as per usual from me, mate. But that, if I'm honest, that's what I've got to try and figure out how to do now, is how to play in a band and carve out separate time for practicing. And I don't know how to build that routine yet.
Well, yeah, I think that's a difficult one to solve. my suggestion might be to find a way to combine the two. So if you're learning a song for the band, try and analyze it musically whilst you're learning it. Try and think, well, what are the actual chords? So I'm learning a song that's got the chords, A, D, and E in it. I know this is in A major. If it's got the chords A, B, and E in it, I know this is in E major, even if it starts on the... You try and do some analysis of the songs you're learning, maybe, and try and find ways to combine the work until you get to a point. When you get to a point where all the songs you know, and you don't have to do any practice or relearning or anything like that, and then when I'm at home, when I'm playing guitar, I'm practicing for me to do certain things, technique or knowledge, and when I'm gigging, I already know the stuff I need to know, and it's fine. I don't need to worry about it.
That's a nice milestone to set, actually.
Yeah.
Get all of those mainstay songs in the set list up to a point where I'm really happy with them, so I'm not conscious about any of the complexities of them at a gig.
Yeah.
And then I can just go back to guitar playing at home, can be then just for me and practicing rather than thinking about stuff I need to finesse for the next gig.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I like that. Good advice, mate. What about you? You've been doing all kinds of different things, but the latest thing I've been hearing you talk a lot about is improving your picking speed.
Yeah.
So... Yeah, I don't consider you a slow player, but
well, no, and you're right. I do have a bit of speed up the old sleeve, but not in a, in a bluesy way, like a bluesy pentatonic run, which I still, I love doing that. But there are things that I listen to as a fan that I enjoy listening to that I can't play, and it's purely just that. It's purely just I want to be able to play some of the things that I enjoy listening to and expand my technique. And I'm thinking of people like, Eric Johnson, people like even Joe Bonamassa. Obviously, he's got quite a lot of picking speed, and anybody really who I'm not thinking shred or metal or anything like that. I'm just thinking some people just have a little bit more capability in terms of speed, and I just want to build that technique. But it takes a lot of patience. I've actually purchased some learning material online by a guy called Marcus Miller, who's got a course on picking speed that he recently released, and I haven't started it yet because over the last few months, anytime I've sat down to play and learn guitar, I've been learning or going over songs for these wedding gigs. But I want to pick that up and start working through it methodically and slowly and bit by bit, and not expecting too much from the beginning, but just trying to trust the material. Sometimes when you're trying to learn something from a book or from, a course that you can, effectively follow within it, you might sometimes think, well, the first 3 or 4 chapters here, I'm not gaining anything because I know this stuff, and it's hard to have patience with it, and you might not start at the right point. And I think I need to just tell myself, just start from the beginning, forget what you can or can't do, just learn the material until you're satisfied with your capability and trust the course that you're doing. And no matter what time it takes, if I do that, I should be able to get to the end of it with an improved capability. So that's what I want to do. But I also want to, I don't want to neglect my kind of harmony knowledge as well. So we spoke like 6 months ago about learning the major scale and how it's harmonized and how that informs a lot of modern music. And I feel I know that really well. I always have. That was something I worked hard on when I was in music college. But what I didn't work hard on is those other scales, like the melodic minor scale and the harmonic minor scale, that harmonize differently. The different scales to, the scales and modes that come from the major scale, which most modern music's based around. And I've never learnt those well. And I know a lot of the music that I do listen to leans on that slightly, especially like jazzy blues stuff that I like listening to, like Robin Ford or Josh Smith. A lot of the stuff they lean on tends to be from melodic minor, and I don't know that well enough, not just from I understand the scale and how it's different to the major scale, but it harmonizes differently. So some chords that you might hear, like sharp 11s and different things, altered chords, they're harmonized from these different scales, and I don't know that area of music well enough. So I want to spend, if we have this conversation in 6 months' time, I want to be able to say to you that I've improved my picking speed and capability. And I really understand the melodic minor scale, its modes, and how it harmonizes better, and I can hear that and understand it better in my ear as well. That's what I want to be able to say.
Wow, that's a big hairy goal.
It's a big hairy goal, actually, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. No, but that's within your capabilities because of all of the theory knowledge that you already have. So I don't think that's a massive leap for you as much as it sounds. That's cool, man. That's really good that you've defined it.
Well,
so
fingers
clearly.
crossed, just need to plan. Just need to plan it a little bit. Just try and fit a bit of time in to really, focus on certain areas when practicing and not just kind of go, well, I've got half an hour to practice now. What shall I do? I should be planning that time a bit better. Or having some, maybe the first few weeks, the time that I have to spend practicing, instead I'll use that time to plan practice sessions. And then I can have a stack of tasks to do for half an, do you know what I mean? Maybe plan it a bit better for a while before I start a routine of practicing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'll do.
Yeah, nice. Is that like having a meeting about a meeting you're
going to have? Exactly that. Yeah. I'm going to have an internal kickoff meeting first about my practice sessions.
It does make sense. It does make sense. It's like what I did, albeit much more sophisticated, where I literally sat there one day and just said, I'm going to just write down the songs that I just want to learn. And then at least I've committed to this is what I'm going to try and do. So when I go to do some practice, I'm not thinking, oh, what shall I do? It's like, just pull out the list. There it is. You've already mapped it out. You've already had a chat to yourself. Do that. So I am with you. I'm being cheeky, but I get what you're saying. Totally. A to-do list. Map out your to-do list and how you're going to do it.
Right,
nice.
Dude.
Nice.
I've got to wrap it up. But this has been fantastic practicing and revisiting the things we need to do. I look forward to having this conversation again in 6 months' time.
Brilliant. Likewise, buddy. Good luck with the practicing.
Absolutely. I'll speak to you next week. Have a cracking weekend. Enjoy your gig.
And you,
love to the family.
Cheers,
I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, likewise.
All
Cheers,
the best, buddy.
Speak soon, buddy.
Thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. Remember to come and find us on our social media pages at Facebook and Instagram. If you want to buy some merch, you can click on the link in our description to go to our Etsy store to get some merchandise, or you can buy us a coffee if you want to. Follow the link for buymeacoffee.com/Guitar Smarts. That would be really helpful if you did want to support the show. Otherwise, thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.